What a journey it's been. And in series 3, I'm just going to go through a number of questions that were posed to me. And some of these questions, based if you've looked at series 1 and 2, you would already have answers to. But just so that, remember, we are both learning. I'm learning and you are learning. So it would be interesting then just to go through them. And the first one, I think it's important that just so that you can get the understanding around how courts actually go around this. Every crime has certain elements that must be complied with for one to have to be said to have committed that particular crime. And when we look at rape, for example, the issue of there are certain elements. One is the issue of sexual penetration with another person, and obviously without their consent. And then that act, obviously, if there is no consent, would be unlawful. But importantly, there must be intention. So the issue of intention is quite important. And then the other issue is when we look at compelled rape, one, there must be a person compelling another person to do or to commit an act of sexual penetration with the victim or the complainant. And obviously, that will be without the consent of the person being compelled and the complainant or the victim in this case. And also, there will have an element of unlawfulness and an element of intention that is also there. This is very important, South Africa, because it gives you a frame on how the courts and legal practitioners go about thinking when they are engaged in different scenarios. So all of these things are not always clear, black and white. They depend on certain scenarios. In law, I always say 2 plus 2 is not always 4. So let's go then to the first question. They say, but a 12-year-old, can a 12-year-old consent? We've already indicated this, that a 12-year-old cannot consent. They cannot consent to sexual intercourse because they cannot appreciate the nature of the act. So that one will definitely be rape. And then that is the essence of that. 12-year-old cannot, it will be rape. Now, what about a person above 12 years but below 16 years? Now, first, there can be said to be a form of consent, strictly speaking. However, remember now, this is a person between 12 and below 16. Such consent, although considered consent, will still amount to a violation of Section 15 of the Section 15(1) of the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act, Act 13 of 2007. So although we might consider it as consent, it would still remain a statutory violation. So we will then say a person has committed an act or called statutory rape. So that is the answer to that question. Let's move on. Then now we have a person above 16 but below 18. Remember now, when we look at the same act that the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Act, we still realize that it defines a child as a person under 18. However, when you look at Section 15, it just tells us that it is statutory rape when you're above 12 but below 16. So this, in my view, implies that a person that is above 16 is of a consenting age in South Africa and can consent. Now, let then also move to the other question. Somebody asks me, says, Advocate, what about my girlfriend? Can I really be told that I'm raping my girlfriend? Well, remember, even if it's your girlfriend, she has a right to bodily integrity and security, and therefore she has to consent. Remember, voluntary, uncoerced agreement. So, did she consent? If she consented, then it is fine if she consented. If she did not consent, then it's a rape, even if she's your girlfriend. Did she say yes, and at some point she said she withdrew her consent and said stop, and you continued. If you continued, then it's still rape. And then remember, South Africans, the fact that a person is your girlfriend does not mean you are entitled to sexually penetrate her body without her consent. Next question. But advocate, what about my wife? How is it that I can be said to have raped my own wife? It remains the same principle with the girlfriend story. The woman has a right to her bodily integrity and security of her own body. She has a right to make decisions about her own body. And even if she is your wife, you are not entitled to sexually penetrate her if she does not want to. And if she gives consent, great, it cannot be said to be rape. But if she says no and you continue, then it is rape. Did she say, for example, maybe she gave you approval and you were enjoying in the heat of things, then she withdrew her consent and said stop, and you continued, then again, it will still be rape. You are not entitled to rape anybody, even if it includes your wife. The only maybe other factors that will be taken into account, especially when we deal with rape of a spouse, and they will look at, for example, the history of violence between the spouses. They look at the injuries, so they'll still have other considerations before an easy determination can be made that there is a rape. But ultimately, consent is a vital element here, or issue, not element, but issue that must be determined. Can a woman be said to rape a man? Yes, it can happen. If a woman, for example, puts a finger in the anus of the man, it will amount to rape. If the woman, by some miracle, is able to make the penis rise and then helps herself to the services without consent, it would then still amount to rape. So these are serious things, South Africans. The same thing if a woman forces, for example, try to, the genitals, put their genitals on the mouth of the man, it can still be, in my view, the same issue. And then can a woman rape another woman? The same principles apply South Africa. If a woman puts an object inside the genitals of a female, or her finger or any part of her body, then it would still amount to rape. So a woman can still strictly rape another woman. Can a man rape another man? If a man uses his genital organs, a penis, puts it in the anus of another man, then we would still have rape. The jury is still out whether, for example, a man that's trying to put the penis on top of the penis, if that can be said to amount to rape. But also the same if a man puts his penis inside the mouth of the man, chances are it would still amount to rape. Then what about then when I'm being forced to rape somebody else? I'm not wanting to, there's a gun on my head, and then I do it. She didn't consent, I didn't consent, but there's a gun on my head. Then certainly you would not have consented. You would not be the person, you the one that is doing, that's used as a tool under duress. You would not be said to have raped the person, but the person who's pointing the gun would then be found guilty of compelled rape. So the person who's been raped would be a victim of rape. The person used, in my view, as a tool would also be a victim in this instance from where I'm standing. But now, advocate, I decided to be clever, and before we engaged, I asked her to sign an agreement with me, and the agreement is there, and now she's complaining that I raped her. Well, at least you were clever enough to have a contract in place, so that provides the basis that there was something there, or initially at the time of signing, there was an agreement. But take note, a woman is entitled to withdraw her agreement anytime, her consent anytime. She can withdraw that agreement. And if then she has withdrawn or changed her mind, and then you continued with the sexual act, then it means that the consent was not valid. And if the consent was not valid and you continued, it means then you still have raped her. So the contract, maybe not such a bad idea, but I think you would still be found guilty of rape if at any point in time after the signing of the contract she withdrew her agreement. Then now, but the person says, but advocate, I agreed to have sex with this guy on condition that we use a condom. We started, it was nice, it was fun, there was condom, and at some point I lost track and he removed the condom, and then can it be said that then I was raped? So this one is a bit complicated, South Africans, because I think the jury is still out on this one. There are those that believe that this could amount to rape, because rape, the consent was attached to conditions. Those conditions were not met, and obviously one can argue, I believe successfully, that in the absence of the condom, there would not be an agreement for a person to sexually penetrate the other. But now he pretended that the condom is being used, and it was used for a time, but at the stage removed the condom. So in my view, I think one can make a good case that there was no consent, or it was the moment the lady, for example, realized that there is no condom, he should have then withdrawn. But now there is the issue of, from the time that the guy removed the condom to this time of her realizing there was this deed happening, and if she knew that that was happening, she would not even have begun the process. So some say there is a rape, but others argue that, remember, rape is about sexual penetration. So she had agreed to be sexually penetrated. So can we then say, strictly speaking, there is a rape? So I'm not sure. The jury is still out on this one. But one can say, depending on now whether she gets pregnant or whether maybe she gets HIV or AIDS, then maybe there can be a case also for attempted murder that can be made. If pregnant, there are other issues that can be entertained there. But the idea is, and the essence that I want to say is that it depends on the set of facts, and it depends on the different arguments. I would actually be very glad to see this one in court one day. But then again, somebody says, but advocate, somebody tampered with the condom, made a hole so that it can easily break, and then I think the same principle apply here, whether it can be said that I consented, because if I knew he tampered with the condom, I was not going to consent. And if it can be proven, because it's not about what you know, it's about what you can prove. If it can legitimately be proven that the person tampered with the condom, we might have an issue here again of consent, and whether or not the conditions that were attached to the consent, and we might have some that argue that rape happened, and some might say, but she agreed to being sexually penetrated. So we might also have situations where, is there STIs, HIV/AIDS, pregnancy, and all of those. So there are many other issues that we can that are brought about by this set of facts that one would need to consider. But it is not so black and white, right? So there are inherent dangers when we enter into sexual acts that we must reconcile ourselves with, and such are that the condom can break. You understand? Now, how do you prove that this person tampered with it? Because you were there when the wrap was being opened and all of these things. But the idea here is to show you the thought process. If it can be proven that perhaps the person tampered with this, maybe we might have, in my view, a good argument to say, but there was no real consent. Because why? It was obtained actually not fraudulently, because the fact that a person tampered with the condom later maybe was not the approval by then had already been achieved. So let's just go through and play with these things, and some of you might know better than me. So do advise and engage us and see how we can help each other. Now, somebody says, advocate, but how about a person that lied to me that they do not have HIV/AIDS? I agreed just because they said to me they do not have AIDS. So I agree that they can sexually penetrate me because without a condom, because they told me they do not have AIDS. Only realize that they have been really having HIV for 10 years and taking ARVs for over 10 years. So I didn't agree. Can it be said that I consented here? So again, there are two sides to the story. Some say it could be a rape because consent was attached to conditions. Some say it cannot be rape because she agreed to be sexually penetrated. And then the issue now of attempted murder can come in. And this one is an established principle that if in such a situation, if you knew that you had HIV/AIDS and then you potentially infected somebody, then I think you'll be in for attempted murder. Somebody says, but advocate, he used a vibrator, a finger, an object, a bottle, a cucumber. It doesn't matter the object that is used to penetrate you, as long as it penetrates you in your anus, in your genitals, then it can still be said that you have been raped. Do you understand? So it doesn't really matter. And then it doesn't even matter. Somebody says, but an animal was used or any part of the animal. Then again, it doesn't matter the tool. Whether the tool is a person, whether the tool is an animal, whether the tool is an object, as long as the sexual penetration was not consented to voluntarily, uncoerced agreement, then we will have an issue of rape. So having said that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And I'm certainly looking forward to series 4, where we're going to look at the duty to report. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening further.